Hey, good morning, everybody. Nikki Burnett here. This is Taste Life Nutrition Radio, streaming live on KUHS Denver, the most amazing radio station out there, by the way. So if you're not watching it yet, you should start. So Taste Life Nutrition Radio, what are we about? We are about truth in health and wellness, and helping people to realize and understand that we are individuals. We're not the same as anybody else. We're all unique, and we want to be treated that way, and that's what this show is about. You know, it's helping people to start to learn their own body, what their body needs, and not compare themselves to everybody else, because we're so unique. And we all suffer with our unique situations, whether that is mental, emotional, physical, all of the things. And those are the things that we talk about, and of course we talk about dogs. So stay tuned for that. We're going to have some dog people on really, really soon, which always gets me super excited. So today I'm stoked because if you watch the show at all, you know that I love amazingly smart people and innovative companies and innovative people, right? And so this is going to be such a cool show because Shannon is here with me. Shannon, actually, we have a little bit of a history where we went to nutrition school together. Didn't know each other really well, but over the years, she has moved over to some of the lines, the supplement lines that I truly love, right? But is now with a supplement line that is one of the most innovative, amazing, forward-thinking companies that I think that I've encountered in a really, really long time.
Yes.
It's super cool. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to get into that. We're going to talk about, it's not about talking about the supplements, because if you saw what we're talking about, don't gross out, talking about parasites. Which is amazing because I love talking about these things. If you grossed out, you should still watch because and listen, because this is going to be such an amazing, intriguing, interesting, maybe a little bit gross conversation.
You don't have to worry, we don't have any pictures.
No pictures. No pictures. I've seen pictures.
But they're out there.
She's seen pictures. But I'm stoked about this conversation. We've already had conversations, and now we're just going to share the conversations that we've had with you, basically, because this is a much bigger problem than most people realize, right?
Absolutely.
And so that's what we want to... Huh?
We've all got them, which we'll get into.
Yeah, get that one. We've all got them. Crazy scary. So here's what we're going to do. First things first, as always, we are going to talk about what we're grateful for. We start the show with gratitude. We start our day. I think we should start our days with gratitude. We're in a situation right now where there's a lot of craziness in the world. And starting with gratitude, remembering what we're thankful for, can literally change your own environment, the environment around you, your thoughts, your feelings, and that can grow. It's energetic, right? It can grow and it will change. It can grow and expand and just make life good, right? So
it's a good reminder.
It is a good reminder. So what are you grateful for?
So I actually I'm super grateful for the company that I'm working for. It keeps introducing me to my previous colleagues. I mean, Nikki and I, we just continually keep bumping into each other over the last, 10 years, I think, since we graduated from NTI. But I'll just say today, I'm grateful for this opportunity with you and to bump into you again. And just to spread the good word. I mean, not necessarily just about Cellcore, but just this is a topic that I think is a pivotal piece in people's healing journeys to acknowledge that we have parasites, and then as we're going to get into today, I hope everyone learns a thing or two about how they might be affecting your health, and maybe this is something that you haven't considered before, and maybe it's something that you might seek out now, and maybe it's the linchpin in what's been keeping you from getting to your fullest potential. So I think just spreading the good word.
Yeah, and I think that's key. It's really interesting. We have such a situation in our world now where people are getting sick, and it's not with just one or two symptoms. It's multiple symptoms. It's lots of things going on, and you try to they try to treat it. Their doctor tries to treat it. Maybe their functional medicine or functional nutritionist tries to treat it. and it doesn't go away, or it keeps getting worse. And so when I talk to people, I always have, it's always asking the question, why? What are we missing? Why is this happening? We don't have symptoms just because we have symptoms. There's always a reason for it. So we keep digging and keep digging. And that's what, where this, a company like this comes in, which brings me to what I'm grateful for. I'm grateful for innovation. I'm grateful for people who don't stop searching, who keep looking, who aren't necessarily just searching for the drugs to cover up, but digging for the reasons, the root cause, why these things are happening, and then finding the things in the world that are God-given from the earth that can address them better than a lot of times anything else. And now, this is not to say, I say this all the time, this is not to say that drugs aren't necessary. Prescription drugs have their place. They are important in certain situations. But when we have people who are struggling with things like multiple chemical sensitivities, why are they struggling with this? With Lyme disease that doesn't go away, and the multiple co-infections that go along with Lyme disease, and people are struggling and struggling and can't get past this point, and they're living this life of pain and fatigue and the anxiety. Why is this happening? What can we do? These are when the prescription drugs are only covering up the symptoms. That's one thing. Maybe it's good for a short period of time. That can be fine. But when we're not addressing the root cause, that's what functional medicine and functional nutrition is, addressing the root cause. Let's look for why this is happening. Okay? A little bit of a soapbox there, but it's so important to really, I can't say it enough. Always ask why. And so my friend Amber, who is the chiropractor, who's the Chinese medical doctor that you've seen on here before, she always says, act like a child. Why? And it's true. You're just always asking why. And so don't stop. Don't stop. If you're not getting better, find the people, find what's happening. And this is a company who is making waves in chronic disease and finding that root cause and addressing it, which is why we wanted to start it with something as gross as parasites. But I think it's so important to talk about parasites because it's a problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and parasites is a component. So Cellcore, we're pretty niche, kind of boutique nutraceutical line, and I think even nutraceutical is probably just so overused at this point, but we're a professional line, so to utilize the products, you do have to be working with a credentialed practitioner, whether it's an MD, DO. Nikki's got credentials through nutrition therapy, but it's definitely an important component of the healing journey. If I could give just like a 30,000 foot view of what Cellcore is going after, is the toxins in our body, and then the infections and the pathogens that then follow from those toxins. I think we're wrapped up in such a mindset of kill, antivirals, antifungals. We got to eliminate the candida, eliminate the staph, the E. coli. But the problem is there's toxins in the body that are interfacing with our microbiome, our virome, our funguses that we should have these commensal and communal relationships with. But us, the terrain, if we get into like the germ theory versus the terrain theory being like we need to have a clean terrain, and just the world we live in, we're bombarded with agriculture chemicals, glyphosate, heavy metals, radioactive elements, industrial solvents, environmental, the list goes on. Literally hundreds and hundreds of thousands of toxins, and our bodies, we weren't evolutionary created to deal with this onslaught. So when those toxins are infiltrating our bodies and our systems and our organs, our tissues, our cells, they interface right with the microbes that we're supposed to be friends with, and it forces them to pleomorph into more dangerous versions of themselves, and then they propagate, and then now they become pathogenic, right? So, and then we see them on labs, and the mindset is kill, and meanwhile the toxins, they're just never addressed.
Right.
And there's detoxes out there, of course, there's cleanses, but these toxins are intense. They're getting more and more sophisticated, and they're getting really, really hard to get out of the body. So Cellcore's got just a really incredible technology using bioactive carbon to bind onto these and get them out. And then I think that's a good segue into the parasite piece of it. That's, I think, a lot of the times overlooked.
Real quick, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
and I want, because I don't want to gloss over real quick for those who maybe don't totally understand where we're going,
Yes.
or where we're starting from.
Yes.
And when I say
Sorry,
that,
I just jumped right in there.
No, it's great, it's great, because I wanted you to go, and I decided, okay, let's just kind of take a break right there and talk about the terrain theory versus the germ theory, and what exactly that means. So people are starting basically where we are.
So when we think about the germ theory, it's basically demonizing bacteria, germs, basically saying like that's the cause or the reason that a lot of our diseases are present. I mean, we've got infectious disease experts, right? And it's all about going after those pathogens and basically demonizing them. But they're not the problem. The problem is if we get into the terrain theory is, like I said, we need to make sure that we're keeping a clean house. We need to make sure we keep this terrain clean so that it's not hospitable for these germs that are actually supposed to work in symbiotic relationships with us to then kind of turn against us.
Right.
So it goes back to like early scientists. The names are slipping my mind right now, but like when you think of like who's the guy that started pasteurizing?
Pasteur.
Pasteur, yeah. So he's he's kind of where the whole germ theory evolved from.
Yeah.
And then you've got, I think his name is Antoine Bouchamp. I think he's French as well. Who was over here like, no, actually, it's the terrain is what we need to keep our focus on.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So in that, it's making sure that our lymph, I cannot talk at all today. Our lymph system is draining properly and working properly. And so our lymph system, I just kind of want to give a little bit of detail here as we get in and talk to this. A little bit of, anatomy and biochemistry. But the lymph system is similar to the cardiovascular system, but the cardiovascular system has a heart to pump the blood, whereas the lymph system does not. And actually the lymph system depends on you walking and moving in order for it to pump, and it removes toxins and it takes toxins out of the body, and as well as, of course, the liver eliminates toxins, our skin eliminates toxins. We have all of these things that need to be in good working order for, free of toxins, keeping the toxins out of our food, having good food that's nutrient dense, so the body has the ability to take and to detoxify and do all the things that it's supposed to do, and then we can go on and on and on from there. But I kind of wanted to get in the lymph drainage portion of it because this is integral to what needs to be done in order to allow the body to begin to function properly.
Absolutely. So yeah, drainage, opening up drainage pathways is a cornerstone of what we educate with our cell-core practitioners. We can't go in and just start heavy hitting, detoxing the liver, getting into like a cellular detox, really even getting into parasites until we know that these drainage pathways are open. So, I mean, the one that people are most common with, like how often are you eliminating? Like, is your colon flowing? Like, are you pooping
If you're not pooping, it's a problem.
Nobody wants to talk about poop, but some people think that going poop 2 times a week is normal, and that's a huge clog in your drainage elimination.
And you can hear that sometimes, and this is not to bash anybody who believes this, but some people that will go to their practitioner, and the practitioner says, everybody's different, it's fine if you poop once a week.
It's not fine.
It's not fine.
That is extremely health debilitating.
Yeah. A minimum of once a day. Ideally 3 times a day. But
right.
I don't know many people who actually go 3 times a day.
Yeah.
But at minimum once a day. If you don't poop once a day, you have to think about it. Go, what's going on and why? Because there's something up.
And if your practitioner is not acknowledging that as an alarm signal, then I would find a new practitioner.
Yeah. Yeah.
So further up the stream from that, you've got your what we like to call our phase 3 detox. So that's your liver bile duct, your gallbladder. That needs to be free flowing. That's what, when the liver's processing toxins, it'll dump it into the gallbladder. Gallbladder then drops it into the liver bile duct, drops it into the small intestine, on down the GI tract, throughout your stool it goes. So that can be a huge portion of your system that can be congested, can be really stagnant, and then that backs up into the liver. Then that backs into the lymphatic system that Nikki was talking about. And once the lymphatic system gets all sticky and backed up, then we're getting into interstitial spaces, into the cells, and now you're to a point where metabolic waste can't get out of the cell and nutrients can't get in. And then at that point, you're probably sitting in front of a practitioner because you have overt symptoms. So to just start doing a really intense detox right off the bat without addressing these toxins, you're going to mobilize them, but then they have nowhere to go. So you're going to get really sick, you're going to feel terrible, and then they're just going to redeposit, and you're just going to be chasing your tail. So yeah, drainage is a huge component of, again, what we educate about. We have a kind of a couple different protocols, but it's really the first thing we want to work with before you really get deep into any other products, whether it's Cellcore or something else.
Sure.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah. Just understanding that there is a process and a protocol in order to allow the body to work properly.
Set it up for success.
Yeah.
Like, get these pathways open.
Yeah.
So when you do start to go and hammer on these toxins and infections and parasites, there's a clean exit strategy.
Yeah. So let's do it now. Let's talk about parasites.
So just from like a real foundational, basic kind of a definition. So parasites, they're an organism that lives on or within a host, right? And a host is another organism. So in this situation, we the humans are the hosts. And they need us. So they need us, they need our resources, they need our nutrients, our fatty acids, they love sugar, amino acids. I mean, they kind of suck out our own nutrition to fuel their own health cycle so that they can lay eggs and propagate and just kind of take over our territory. There's so many parasites, hundreds of thousands. I mean, when they start to even attempt to catalog the DNA, I mean, there's millions and millions of different SNPs of like parasitic DNA. Most of them are going to be invisible to the naked eye, but then, I mean, I've gotten pictures from practitioners, from friends, from patients who have gone through our parasite cleanse, and they can be as long as, 6 to 8 feet, which is something maybe you picked up as a child, maybe swimming in a lake, and now you're 60 years old addressing some health issues, and maybe we do a parasite cleanse. I mean, people have had to like pull things out, and it can be really disturbing, but it can be so rewarding to get that out.
Well, yeah. I mean, these are things, we may not know it immediately. And I have some clients who we found parasites, and it's fairly immediate. They're like, something's really wrong here. But then others one specifically who, it might have been when she was 6 or 8 years old. She was, as we think back on her history, and she was diagnosed with Crohn's and colitis, I believe, is what she was diagnosed with. But she wasn't getting better. And then we started doing functional lab testing on her and found parasites.
And if it comes up on a lab,
yes,
you're got a lot going on.
And
we'll get into that.
Yeah, that's the key, because it's not always seen in labs.
But. And I think that's super important, kind of what Nikki was saying, is asking questions, and I think getting a full history of the patient, asking like, did you grow up in the Midwest? And then the practitioner should think, okay, glyphosate, different agriculture chemicals. Did you grow up around lakes? You probably went swimming in lakes. That's a really,
we did.
I mean, there's just so many things that you can start connecting the dots.
Yeah.
From a young age, because a lot of the times chronic disease doesn't just happen within a couple months. It can be years, if not decades, before you finally need to go get it checked out.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of the next question people might be thinking, well, I don't have parasites. I live in America, or I live in some developed country, wherever you're listening, from around the world right now. That's just kind of like a third world problem. Like if you go to the doctor maybe and you say, maybe I have a parasite, maybe I was reading some things, it seems to kind of align with some of my symptoms, and the doctor will most likely ask you, well, have you been to any third world countries lately? Like it's just like, even here, like medically trained doctors, it's just not part of maybe their curriculum to even entertain the idea that we would have parasites here. But we do, like a resounding yes, we do. We live in a global economy. Our food is coming from all over the world. You can pick them up from insect bites. I mean, Lyme is becoming a really big issue, or it's probably been an issue for a long time, but it's just finally getting some attention.
I think that it probably has been an issue for a long time, but we're in a world where our bodies are more and more broken down, and they're
more
dealing
toxic,
with more and more stress, and they're more toxic, and we have trashy food and all of these things, and so the symptoms of Lyme and its co-infections are just worse and worse and worse, and truly debilitating. If you're out there and you have it, you know, it's awful.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, gosh, lakes, streams, going on a hike, getting, you know, walking barefoot across the soil. They're in the soil. I mean, they're everywhere. And it's just a matter of your exposure, and then how toxic is the host. Like, do you make it a really nice environment for them to thrive? I mean, not only do they leach our own nutrients from our meals, but they love a good toxic host. They're not going to leach from you so much that you die because they don't want to kill their host.
Right.
But they can make your life miserable.
Make you really, really sick.
Yeah. So how do you know that you have them? So Nikki kind of touched on testing. There are diagnostics out there where you can do a stool sample, and you know, see what comes up. Somebody in some lab is going to be going through there looking for parasites, but I think that type of diagnostic is still very much in its infancy stage. I mean, even just like the microbiome in general. I mean, this is just like we've only hit the iceberg. I mean, the tip of the iceberg, right?
The tippy top.
There's just so much we don't know, and when we look at what parasites we've cataloged and what parasites are part of these different assays, it's a very small number. Like a lab company that I know Nikki works with, we partner up with this called Vibrant America. I mean, their panel runs 24, which is the most I'm aware of. But there's hundreds, if not thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of parasites. So, and parasites, they're not looking to be evicted. Like, they're not looking to just come out. So, I mean, they've got their teeth dug in so deep into your organs, tissues, and your brain and your gut lining. So for them to actually come out in a stool is pretty rare. And then maybe if one does come out, if it's not one of those 24, or another company maybe only runs 9, right? Like, it's going to be like, oh, negative. So people are getting false negatives left and right, and it's not expensive to do these tests, like some of these functional diagnostic tests.
Right.
So then it's written off, and then on they go without addressing parasites.
Yeah, and the disease just keeps getting worse, because again, going back to, if we don't address parasites, or you know, whatever else, you know, if it's, you know, whatever toxicant might be sitting there, and keep going, addressing above it, essentially, then the problem doesn't go away, because we're not getting to the root cause.
So Dr. Todd Watts, he is one of the co-founders of Cellcore, and he's got a functional medicine practice up in Boise, Idaho, and he was having so many patients come in. They were like, symptomatology-wise, they were all like aligning with, like, he's like, man, I think that there's a parasitic infection going on. Would do tests, you know, and everybody's coming back with negatives. So eventually he's just like, screw it, I'm just going to start treating people as if they do have parasites and see what happens. And his patients started dumping parasites, like ones that came back, you know, negative tests. And a lot of those patients, like, that was again like a turning point in their healing journey, and that was what was being skipped. And I'll get into why that's so important. So just like some of the symptoms, you know, skin bumps, rashes, abdominal pain, diarrhea, sleeping problems, anemia, inflammation, joint pain, allergies is a really, really common one, just overall just fatigue. But those symptoms are everything.
They're everywhere,
like,
and everything.
Every single diagnosis, right, is going to probably have one, if not all of those symptoms. So that's where it's also getting so tricky to treat people these days, is because it's not just one thing, and there's so many issues compiled, and all of these different diagnoses and conditions and issues that we're having, all of their symptoms overlap. So it's hard to really like hone in on, like, this is what's wrong with me, because it's not just one thing. So I would say, if you are kind of at this point where you're just like hitting roadblocks and you're hitting these, like, banging your head against the wall because you just can't get to where you want to be health-wise, just give a consideration that maybe it is parasites that maybe need to be addressed. Anything more I want to say about that?
I don't think so. I think we're pretty good.
Yeah. So how exactly are these affecting your health? So I mentioned, they're robbing our nutrients, but even more scary is that, so in functional medicine, right, we talk about everybody having this toxic bucket, right? And unfortunately, kids now that are being born, I mean, their buckets are just probably a quarter, if not half full, when they're born, just because of what's being passed on from the mother.
I've even heard, up to 80% full.
Which is super sad. So you've got kids that by the time they're 8, 9, 10, teenager, I mean, they're having chronic issues that we shouldn't hopefully see at all, but like that typically you wouldn't see until you're 30, 40, 50. And because again, everything just keeps compounding. So when we have these toxic buckets, so whether in your bucket it's glyphosate, or whether it's heavy metals, or whether it's radioactive elements, I mean, so many things, right? Like toxins are a sponge for those toxins. Parasites are a sponge for all of those toxins.
This is super interesting. Pay attention to this. I just think it's
really
interesting.
Yeah, they soak it up, and not only the toxins, but also any chronic infections that might be happening in your body. And again, going back to the toxins are kind of what's driving the infections. You remove the toxic agents, and the infections are going to come away. But parasites are a safe house. They're a harbor for toxins and infections to burrow into. And parasites can hold about 10 times their weight, so they're eventually going to get full too. So eventually they're going to start just like kind of sloughing off different metabolic waste, viral byproducts, bacterial byproducts. I always like to give the analogy is like you got a kitchen sponge and it can only soak up so much water, and then if you drag that sponge across the kitchen counter, there's going to be little water droplets up behind it. So kind of the same thing with the parasites. They can only soak up so much, and this is where it gets into when somebody maybe goes on like a cleanse or a detox or a Lyme or a mold protocol. Again, those parasites are all that Lyme, the co-infections of Babesia, the Bartonella, the Borrelia, all the mycotoxins, the rachotoxin, gliotoxin, whatever, it's all going to be inside those parasites. So maybe you do a decent job of cleansing out the system, but then they rebound maybe like 6 to 8 months later because it's just coming out of the parasites again. So this is where this can be a really key point to address if you just feel like you keep rebounding.
So I have a question. Have scientists taken these parasites and like tested them for all of the stuff that they soak up?
Not to the extent that we would like.
Okay.
I'm giving out my $1 million idea, so nobody better to steal this. I think it'd be really cool. So we have patients, right? And
are you sure you want to give away your idea?
I don't know. Maybe I don't. Should I not? No.
Maybe do an overview.
We don't have adequate testing. I don't think so.
Okay.
So because we've got patients that are passing out these parasites, but it's like, how do we know what it is, what the species is, what's in that parasite? So, I mean, back to Dr. Todd Watts, I mean, he would even have patients put like parasites that they passed in the stool sample that they mailed off to the lab, and it would still come back as a negative.
What?
Like, I mean, so that's how I just think.
Oh man, that's
we're just not
interesting
there.
And sad. And I know that labs are not 100% accurate. I tell my clients that every time we do them. Like,
and they constantly shift.
Yeah.
Always are moving. So if you didn't have heavy metals to start and you're going through a cleanse and they all of a sudden spike, that's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. That means that your body's ready to release, to put it in circulation, to get it out.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's interesting.
They're a moving target.
Yeah, they are, and it's really difficult when you run the labs, you depend on the labs. You know it's not 100%, but you do. I mean, I build protocols around symptoms, labs, goals, environment. Everything that we can to build a protocol around for each client. But again, until our recent conversation, didn't know that it was so difficult to find parasites. And I knew it was difficult. Metals are really difficult. There are certain toxicants that are really, really difficult, and I know that. But it's just eye-opening in now the way that I will work with clients moving forward.
Yeah, it's this can be. I'm a broken record. It can just be a game changer.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Which is what we need, you know, in our world of significant chronic disease. We need some game changers.
Yeah. So where do these guys hang out? Like, where are they in our body? Of course, I think the first thing we think of is the gut, which is true, but they're not just gut-based. I mean, you can have parasites, you can have liver flukes, you can have lung flukes, you can have parasites in your joints, in your blood, in your cells, in your brain, in your sinus cavity. And again, just always go back to they are just like a concentrated coil of whatever's in your toxic bucket. So wherever they are locally in your body, they can be sloughing off these byproducts that just, you know, can create a cytokine storm and local inflammation in your brain or in your joints or whatever. Like, everybody kind of has a weak spot, and that's where infections and toxins tend to thrive. So they're all over. They're head to toe. People who are like really infested. I mean, they can be coming out of the skin. I mean, you don't just pass them through the bowels. They come out of your nose. I mean, it's gross.
It is gross, but how freeing it is when they're gone.
Yeah. Okay, so how do we get rid of them? Like, so clearly we know that they're not good. They're not serving us. I mean, the only maybe positive thing is they do soak. At least they can soak up some of this toxicity, but it's not to say that it doesn't come right back out of them.
Yeah.
So, at the end of the day, we need to get them out. And I'll say too that the goal isn't, and I don't know if it's realistic to say we would completely 100% eradicate all parasites, but I think we need to get back to like a baseline of like we're in charge and like we're back to like where we need to get to health. Just like we will never eradicate all of the viruses and the bacteria and the funguses. Like, that's not the goal. It's just to keep them in check.
It is to keep them in check. And to kind of expand on that a little bit, you know, we have what we call our microbiome. We have a virome, and we have these what we call commensal or happy bugs, right? And so what can happen, and I'm gonna make this fairly simple because it's a great example, but you know, most everyone has heard of a yeast infection. Women get them all the time, men get them as well. They're not just vaginal, they can be systemic. And so this is a yeast called Candida. Candida is a natural yeast to the vaginal canal. It's also natural to the gut, I think probably in different proportions for different people. But when you're in a place where you are toxic, you're inflamed, you know, things like that, this can create a situation where these commensal bacteria or yeast then become opportunistic. And so that opportunistic is kind of the key, because say a woman, you know, now I have a yeast infection, oh, it's the worst thing in the world because it does suck. But that's when they have then become opportunistic. They have taken over. There's not enough of the other good bugs that keep it in check. And so we have a lot of this where we have these commensal bugs who become opportunistic, creating a lot of problems. Then we have true pathogenic bugs, right? You know, I think most parasites are pretty pathogenic. We don't really want many parasites, but we do have a natural virome, same situation. We have viruses, and they help us kind of to survive.
They do. Like, viruses is another thing that's been completely vilified in the last year and a half. But we need them. Like, we have not evolved as a human species without the input of viruses. They're just, they're packets of information. And they do. Sometimes they do insert themselves into our DNA, and sometimes in our evolution, like, that's when maybe we would have had like an evolutionary leap, like in how we've developed as a species. So that's not to say that they're not important, but they can make us feel sick, and that's why we need to keep a healthy immune system, which is a whole nother.
It's all about keeping the terrain healthy. Yes,
absolutely,
exactly.
So where were we going now?
Where were we? Was it how to get rid of them? How to evict them is what you put, which I like.
Evict them, they're not welcome. So there's a lot of different parasite cleanses out there. There's well-known like antiparasitic botanicals. There's even pharmaceutical drugs out there. So there is some acknowledgement, I guess, in the medical world. Ivermectin is one that's had some publicity as of recently. It's a well-known, not, I maybe shouldn't say well-known, but it's been around for a very long time.
I think it's fairly well known because it's used, if you have animals, it's always used in animals. And I have to say, dogs don't need yearly ivermectin. Makes me crazy.
Okay.
I have to throw it in there because if they don't, you have to test them. If they don't have worms, they don't have parasites, then you don't just give them ivermectin to give them ivermectin. It's safe to an extent, but to constantly insult the immune system with antimicrobials is not a good idea.
I agree with that.
And so I always have to put in dog stuff somewhere.
Okay, I appreciate that.
So anyway, but ivermectin is been around. It's been around a long time. It's used in farm animals. It's used in our animals, and it's used for us.
It's used for us, and I think that just goes to there's absolutely connection between like viruses and your viral load and continually having like a viral like Epstein-Barr or Lyme, or like when you have these reoccurring viral flares, that's another cue to you to check out parasites because they're connected. Like I said, those parasites can be a safe house for those viruses, and if you don't infect the parasites, the viruses and the toxins just have like this really cool hideout. As well as biofilms and other things that they can hide in, but we get rid of those too. So
biofilms are little protective layers. If you don't already know that, they're protective layers which make it really difficult for antimicrobials to work properly because it protects them from the antimicrobials.
And from the immune system. The immune system can, they can walk right past the biofilm that's harboring all these bad things that we don't want, and none the wiser.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So Cellcore, as a part of their pretty small catalog of about 23 products, we've got 3 parasite products, and they're named really easy: Para 1, Para 2, Para 3.
Perfect.
The names kind of pigeonhole them into like just parasites. They do so much more, like Candida. Para 3 is amazing to get Candida out. But Para 1 is starting with gut-based parasites. So it's organic Mimosa pudica seed. It's an Ayurvedic adaptogenic herb. And it's been used for thousands of years. I mean, it comes from India, so your third world. I mean, they know the benefits of doing these parasitic cleanses. But the seed is an extremely sticky material, so when it's going through the gut, it's a great gut scrubber, is the best way I could put it. So it's going to grab onto these parasites that otherwise have their teeth dug in really deep, but it's really effective. And working with a practitioner, they can kind of help find what your therapeutic dose is, but sometimes you need to go a little bit higher with the dosage to really get these guys out. I will say a little clinical pearl: if you're gonna do a parasite cleanse, do it around the full moon.
Yes.
For whatever reason, parasites like rear their heads around the full moon, and then it's the great time to just like smack them down.
It's true, and it's crazy cool and gross and amazing.
Something about like that moon gravitational
it's the energetic
pull.
Yeah.
Out of my world, but I do know that if you only can devote even a week, I think you need more time than just a week. But
for sure.
We have a lot of people who maybe do like what we call a full moon cleanse or a full moon kit, and it's like the gateway drug, and it's like, okay, what else you got? Because this is cool. I can see the proof in the pudding. I can see the stuff coming out. So we've got, so Para 1, really good for gut-based parasites. Para 2 is going just a little bit deeper. Para 2 and Para 3 are more like your antiparasitic herbals and botanicals, but we deliver them with a really cool and kind of proprietary technology called bioactive carbon. Basically, we're extracting humic and fulvic acids from the soil, but we don't just stop there. In our lab, we can functionalize these carbon chains to where they're just really saturated with energy, with oxygen, and just really healing and regenerative properties. So as we're going in there and kind of delivering these antiparasitics to the tissues, as we're pulling these guys out, we're oxygenating the cells, we are repairing kind of what we're pulling out. So Para 2, really good for like organs, tissues, and then Para 3 is going even deeper, like interstitial spaces, into the brain. I mentioned you can have parasites in your nasal cavity. Para 3 is a liquid, so you can actually use it in like a nasal rinse or a neti pot. And I've seen photos that people have sent me of blowing their nose after doing a para 3 nasal rinse and like worms coming out of their nose. So immediately
Wow.
that's like really gross, but that could be the underlying reason you've had chronic sinus infections.
Yeah, I almost always blame chronic sinus infections on candida. So,
and back to the
that's
candida
interesting.
too, it's like the candida is not necessarily the issue, it's an underlying toxin. Like you remove the toxicant
Yeah.
that is causing that candida to spiral out of control, it doesn't spiral out of control anymore.
Right,
So it
right.
really does come back to the toxic load of the body, because then there's nothing really assaulting your commensal bacteria,
Yeah.
funguses, viruses, whatnot.
Yeah.
See, I keep getting carried away here.
So much to talk about.
Another thing too to consider when you're doing these parasite cleanses is when we're stirring these guys up, like they're not going to go down without a fight. So as they're coming out, they also might be sloughing off some of their metabolic waste. So it's really good to have a binder. So we have a biotoxin binder to kind of Pac-Man behind those parasites and scoop up, different sulfurs, ammonias, again like the bacterial and viral byproducts. That's really, really important, and that's what I appreciate about Cellcore is they kind of hit it at all angles.
Yeah.
So what can you expect when they're gone? It depends on what your laundry list of symptoms is. And again, I don't want to preach that this is like the end all be all, but a lot of stuff can start to clear up. I'm going to reference back to Dr. Todd Watts, our co-founder. I mean, he was battling with Lyme, Epstein-Barr, and then an unknown parasite infection, and I mean just extreme malaise and fatigue, like couldn't play with his children. His story is really moving, and it was when he was using Mimosa pudica in his practice, and then his Ayurvedic practitioner got in a shipment from India of the Mimosa pudica seed. He's like, hey, you want to try this? He was like, why not? And that's when he started really moving the parasites, and it was a huge pivotal point in his healing journey. And he was able to clean up the Lyme and the Epstein-Barr because that was the missing link, was getting the parasites out, because he didn't keep then getting reinfected.
So I think I want to back up a little bit and hit on the reason why the company is so innovative, because these herbals and these adaptogens and these things are things that have been used for thousands of years.
Yeah.
Innovative, but innovative a long time ago. But what you kind of glossed over.
I do. Yeah, we need to come back to it.
Yeah.
I know where you're going.
Yeah. Is the fulvic and the humic acid, and what it is about these carbons that make it work so well. Why does it work well? One of the things that you said to me the other day, when I do antimicrobials, I often will use a product that is kind of what she was just saying. It's that cleanup, so people can experience pretty intense what we call die-off or Herxheimer symptoms. And it can make you fluey, yucky. I mean, it has been for some people who are super, super toxic. It's put them in the hospital, right? And so one of the things that you said, because these things always have charcoal and clay, these are like the best things in the world because they bind up everything. If you take them with food, they're going to bind up the nutrients. They're going to bind up, if you take supplements or if you take pharmaceuticals, it'll bind it all up and it'll pull it out. So you have to be careful about when you take it, but it'll pull out those toxins from these microbes, whatever they might be, and helps to feel better. But what you said, which I thought was so intriguing, was that those things are spent energy.
Yeah, so when we get into the conversation of bioactive carbon, it's the backbone of Cellcore. It is why this company, this fairly new 4 or 5-year-old company, is having insane success. We're growing like crazy. And when you look at the back of the supplement bottle, you're going to see a lot of usual suspects when you see some of like our parasite blends. You're going to be like, oh yeah, I'm familiar with some of these antiparasitic herbs and botanicals. The kicker is that we include our bioactive carbon, aka these humic and fulvic acids, as the backbone of all of our products for 3 reasons. Especially for our binders, this bioactive carbon is an incredible binder. It is saturated with energy. Like Nikki referenced, we have kind of an older category of binders, and maybe some of you listeners have used things like activated charcoal, zeolites, clays, diatomaceous earth. Those have all, they've been good, but now we have something better, which is good. I mean, we need to be ever evolving with what's available to us. So kind of some of the drawbacks with that older category of binders is they're long chain carbons, so just the size of them alone is going to keep them beholden to the gut. And as we've talked about, we have plenty of stuff that's systemic as well. Like it's good to clean out the gut for sure, but we can't just stop there. There's also no energy. It's spent energy. I gave Nikki the analogy the other day of like if you have a campfire, the next morning when you wake up and it's just black charred logs of wood on the fire, you can't reignite that. It's dead. Like there's no more spent energy. Like that's activated charcoal. So it's really porous, and again, it can soak things up. I'll riff on that for a minute. When it does bind on, like things like activated charcoal, when it does bind onto a toxin or pathogen, it's really ripping it out of the cell or the tissue, and there can be a little bit of localized inflammation, damage, but there's no energy to kind of donate to that tissue to replenish it. So it just rips it out and takes it out. And that bond too, when it links on, is not the strongest bond. So that toxin or infection might even just fall right back off downstream, still inside. And then another really important thing Nikki said is there's worry, like it binds onto everything. It'll leach long-term like nutrients, minerals. We can't take it with food, which gets into compliance issues with patients.
Difficult,
it's just it's kind of a circus. So when we look at the bioactive carbon that Cellcore has, it is saturated with energy. I mean, it's just what humic and fulvic acids are is basically carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, a little bit of nitrogen. It's the building blocks of life. So humans are 94 to 97% carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. And that last little 3 to 4% is all the other minerals, right? So when we're decomposing in the soil, when we pass away, whether it's animal or plant material, those microbes are breaking us down, and basically we're just recycling those building blocks back into the soil, and that comes as a byproduct of humic and fulvic acids. So when we're using these bioactive carbons internally now, when we're binding onto different toxins and infections, we can readily donate carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, the very building blocks of life. And again, there's just so much energy, and there's so much oxygen that we can. Oxygen is a huge component to healing. Like we need to oxygenate our cells and our tissues. As far as so I've hammered on how its binding capacity is, and also you can take our binders with food, and that's a huge thing.
That's really nice,
Not only is it not going to rob nutrients, so humic and fulvic acids, bioactive carbon also inherently has 70 some trace minerals, all of your 12 essential amino acids, so it can readily donate what you're deficient in. It doesn't take anything. If anything, it gives what you need. So you can take it with food, and there's no long-term ramifications. We also like to use this bioactive carbon as a protective mechanism, so this is where it gets into why we're having such good success with our parasitic formulas, that you might be familiar with looking at the label, but the kicker is that the fulvic acid really in this, because the fulvic is a super small particle size. So we charge these carbons to a very specific pH. So everybody's slamming all these supplements, and as soon as they hit hydrochloric acid in the stomach, they just get ripped apart. So by the time they get to the small intestine, we're absorbing maybe 10, 15, max 20% of all these supplements that we're taking. And some of these supplements are not cheap.
No.
So when we deliver our formulas, the other ingredients in that capsule with the fulvic acid, it's protecting them with that specific charged pH to get through the upper GI, the really harsh acidic, upper GI. So when they get to the small intestine, they're still pretty much intact. We are absorbing anywhere from 70, 80 to 100% of these nutrients. And then also fulvic acid is a great delivery system, so it can actually shuttle these nutrients into the cells or into the tissues wherever we need to go to kind of flush out these parasites. That's just a really important piece of that's why we're having such good success. It is because of this bioactive carbon. We have a panel of scientists at our lab in Boise, Idaho, that's what they do. Like, they look at these carbons. Like, I mean, there's hundreds of different carbons that we work with in our products, and how we can optimize them to where, you know, we're looking at mitochondrial health, or we're going to be looking at brain health, cognition, cardiovascular. I mean, there's just so many different areas where we can utilize these carbons to optimize our health, our body.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I was, you know, looking at the website and doing a little checking around. If you want to check them out, you should, because they've got tons of data. And that's what I love about, you know, this is why I use professional lines, is because they have data backing their products. And we're not guessing about what's in them like we would if we're going to Amazon or eBay. And I've said this before.
A practitioner's nemesis.
I know. Well, it's the thing, you know, and I say it over and over again, but when you order from these groups, these companies, you don't know what's in the product. Even if it says what it is, it may not be that. And there's data on that. There's data, I'm not going to say anything where there's not data, but there's data showing it could be expired, it's not what it is, it could be wood chips or sawdust.
Dog food. There was a story a couple years ago where somebody ordered, I don't know, some vitamin supplement from Amazon, opened it up, and it was dog food, because Amazon's return policy is, they'll take back anything, like, especially in the first 30 days. So somebody literally, the first person ordered the supplement, dumped it. You can easily just get a little vacuum plastic sealer, sent it back. On Amazon, there's no quality control. It goes back into whoever the seller's locker is, and then somebody else places an order, so that bottle comes back out. And yeah, it was like an older lady, and she opened it up, and she was like, "This is dog food." I mean, there's stories about that all the time, but really you want to worry about expired product, contaminated.
Yeah.
It's really what's in the bottle is probably not what's you think it is.
It's not. And that's why it's such a problem for practitioners, because if we tell you, okay, go to Amazon or to eBay or wherever you go and just pick up this specific product, and it ends up actually being damaging, you know, we do this because we're educated and because we have a pretty good idea what it is we want you to be on. And then just to say willy-nilly, we'll go get it somewhere else, and it's not what it is, and it actually creates a problem. It looks bad on me, it looks bad on the company, it looks bad on everybody, and it certainly doesn't help the client or the patient. And so using specific lines that have the data to back them up and are good at what they do, and they don't put out trash products. If there's anything wrong, they're gonna, you know, they're gonna take it off the line and they're gonna redo it. It's really, really important. And I say all of this because you can go to the website and you can look at all of the data. And this company, I am a data person. I like to understand what it is. And one of the things that I appreciated, it's kind of your, what I would say is kind of your 4 pillars, is research, science, energetics, and trials. And having clinical trials, there are some companies who do clinical trials, but it's not always easy, because clinical trials really are typically on pharmaceuticals, because that's where the money is.
It's very expensive, it's cost prohibitive, and it's time prohibitive. I mean, clinical trials can take years. Years and years and years. So it's a very science-driven company. I mean, we have a practitioner training event once a year, and it is just 3-day jam-packed with data backing up the efficacy of our products. This is the research coming behind, you know, something like TUDCA, or I mean, you go into PubMed and you even type in just fulvic acids with oncology, with cardiovascular disease, with Parkinson's, Alzheimer's. I mean, there's so many good benefits to these bioactive carbons. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, it's really important. So I want to make sure, though, that there's an understanding. We talked about parasites here, because parasites, I mean, they're gross, but they're fun to talk about. But, you know, what we're looking at also is environmental toxicants, you know, your glyphosates, your radon, the radiation.
Is the elephant in the room. Nobody's talking about radioactive elements. I mean, we're based in Colorado here, and we live on a huge radon vein. But that, you know, somebody who has heavy metals through the roof, maybe it's the radioactive elements that are the magnet to where they can't really let the heavy metals go. Like, it's a huge underpinning of also help. And there's just so many things that can be bringing you down.
It's amazing. And it's so complex. It's amazing. And so, you know, other things that they address, you know, they're addressing oxidative stress and mitochondrial dysfunction and chronic disease, you know, but it's all about, again, what is the underlying condition? Is it the heavy metals? Is it the parasite or the microbes? What is the...
I would say
the
underlying
main issue?
toxin.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Underlying toxin.
What did I say?
I think you said condition.
Okay, yeah. Toxin.
But
Thank you.
that's where it's like when
Mhm.
we've got all these different supplement companies, and I make this joke with like when I have a new practitioner account, I'm like, the last thing the world needs is another supplement company. Like, if you're gonna come into this lane, you really have to have something unique and cutting edge and something that works. And that's what Cellcore has. I mean, we have really powerful, potent products. It's literally just organic raw material delivered with the bioactive carbon. There's no other ingredients. It's just the capsule, because we don't need other ingredients to help deliver and protect these products. That's the job of the bioactive carbon.
It's amazing.
So I was going somewhere. Oh, but just back to the toxin, like, we have plenty of adrenal protocols and thyroid protocols and leaky gut protocols and things to help you be more alert during the day and wake you up. But if you swim upstream and you just do a proper detox out of all the toxins that are in your bucket, downstream, the organs and the tissues can kind of like take this big sigh of relief that the burden's been lifted for them, and they can get back to doing what they're meant to do, which is producing energy or diuretic hormone, like whatever, like just making sure that you are functioning to be your optimal self. So yeah, it really is. I think this is a good place to wrap it up. Is like I think there's 3 root causes. It's toxins, pathogens, and trauma. Like,
yeah.
You
without a doubt.
You clear those 3 things up. You're gonna make some amazing headway with your health.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think the way that you put it is key, because we want to live. The thing that I always say is we don't know how long we're going to live, so it's not about longevity. Longevity is important, right? But we don't know what's going to happen when we walk out that door.
Quality.
Yeah. It's really about how we live, how well we live, how we thrive. It's not about just getting by to get by, because that's a miserable life. We want to truly optimize and be productive, successful citizens of this life that we have, and I think that's really important. So this was awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. That flew by. I can't believe it's an hour.
It's so fast, isn't it?
I was so nervous.
I know. I always sweat in here.
It's hot in here.
So real quick, you are the rep here in Denver. Do you have a larger?
So I am the sales manager for Colorado and Wyoming.
Okay.
Cellcore itself is based out of Idaho, Meridian, which is like a little suburb of Boise. But with the exception of, I think, 3 or 4 countries, we do deliver worldwide. We're building a practitioner base worldwide. As far as a rep goes, we only have reps in the United States here. But if you are a practitioner listening, you can just go to cellcore.com and you can register for a practitioner account. If you are would be a patient, or just any other person, not a practitioner, you'll want to link up with a practitioner that is a Cellcore provider, and you can just give Cellcore's home office a call and say, hey, can you connect me with a practitioner, and they can help you do that. But yeah, they've got, again, I know we just kind of covered the parasitic piece of what we can do, but this company has changed lives. Like, people who have gone through the gamut and just have not been able to really get to where they want to be with their health goals. Some of these toxins are really tricky, and Cellcore's they're just phenomenal with what they can do. Yeah. Cool.
All right. Well, thank you, as always, for joining us. A couple of things. So you can find me, Nikki Burnett, at Taste Life Nutrition. You can find all the social media is Taste Life Nutrition. So, and I'm Nikki Burnett. And a couple of things that you can do, you can go to my website. I have a free analysis on the website where you can go in, fill it out. I personally reach out to you. We chat a little bit. Are there things that we need to cover briefly, or are there things that we need to get into that are a little more deep? So feel free to fill that out.
Nikki's a practitioner. She's a Cellcore practitioner.
Yes.
So just reach out to her. What am I talking
No, it's fine. I kind of assumed that they would think that I'm a Cellcore practitioner, but yes. Reach out to me.
Don't call Salgor, call Nikki.
All good. And then, okay, so for you ladies out there and for you men who know ladies who would be interested in, the thing that we were talking about is really optimizing health. We have women who are busy and running businesses and running families, and you're entrepreneurs and you're solopreneurs and you're businesswomen and you're dog mompreneurs, which is what I am. But trying to get through life as best as possible with something going on, right? We have these health conditions, this brain fog and the fatigue and all these things, they keep just holding us back to truly living that optimal life. And so the goal, or what I am asking, is that you go to Facebook, if you're on Facebook, look for the group Body Bliss, and the tagline is Lifestyle Design for the Busy Woman. And that's really what it is we, myself and Dr. Lynn, so if you watch Dr. Lynn on her show, she'll be here tomorrow, have created this in order to do our best at supporting, to give guidance, to love on each other and to love on you, and to educate each other and really help to move through these things that are holding us back so we can all thrive. So if I'm thriving, I can allow others to thrive, and then we're all thriving together, and we build this amazing big community which spreads and spreads and spreads. And it just starts with me, right? It just starts with you. So look for Body Bliss, join us. Let's have some fun with this, and we're grateful for all of you out there listening, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Thanks.
Thank you.